a public hearing regarding the petition for annexation of .28 acres in Middlefield Township to the Village of Middlefield. This public hearing will be held in Commissioners' Chambers during regular session at 470 Center Street, Building Number 4, Chardon.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Spudler.
Aye.
Commissioner Smeedy.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to start with a presentation by Municipal Court Judge Stopika. So, Judge Stopika, if you'd like to come forward, and I know you have some other people that you'll have speaking.
Commissioner Johnson, Smeedy, Spitaleri, fellow colleagues, and community members. Thank you for your presence here this evening. And more importantly, thank you to the commissioners for unanimously tabling the vote on the resolution herein to enable the presentation of additional information from many vantage points. When Commissioner Jemison approached me in late June to present to the commissioners the potential programs that the Opiate Task Force believed were priorities in attacking this heroin epidemic, I was very eager to do so. I sent an email to every member of the Opiate Task Force to send a proposal to be sent to me to disseminate to the remaining Opiate Task Force members for what needs their individual group deemed important in attacking this epidemic. Commissioner Spitaleri's presentation was wonderful, but I believe that providing additional information for a well-rounded decision is essential to fight this epidemic from the best vantage points possible, and I truly appreciate this opportunity on behalf of the Opiate Task Force. As an aside, I don't have a wonderful PowerPoint. I'm an idiot savant when it comes to computers, so I'm just speaking from the heart. So, I believe some background is necessary. Last March 2012, Mayor King of Chardon brought together some members of the community, legal, law enforcement, medical, program directors, for a presentation by the Euclid Police narcotics detectives with whom Chief McKenna and Lieutenant Duncan of Chardon had been working with on cases for months. They brought to our attention the fact that many of the drug busts or arrests that they were making in Euclid were young adults from the Geauga County area. The Chardon police had been investigating cases which indicate that our community was having a problem with heroin. This concern, as I said, led to a meeting and the conception of the Opiate Task Force, which gratefully Mayor King let me run with. The task force is composed of many community members, from legal, law enforcement, courts, medical, spiritual, therapeutic, parents of addicts, recovering addicts themselves, and community program members, among others. And though we have no funds to work with, we are on the front lines daily with our hearts, our heads, and very limited resources, either in preventing the use, educating to even prevent starting drug use and abuse, intervening in an early stage of already using, or incarcerating to detox and save lives, and treating those already afflicted. Cancer, heart disease, and many other serious illnesses or diseases do not affect the community as a whole. It may affect an individual if, unfortunately, a family member is afflicted with one of these diseases. Opiates, and especially heroin, however, affects the entire community. It affects the safety of our homes with the increase of burglaries and breaking and enterings that are on the rise. It affects consumers because costs have to rise in order to assuage the costs from the theft. The health and safety of our schools and community is affected in general due to known drug trafficking and drug uses in areas throughout Geauga County. It's here, people. We are experiencing an epidemic. For those unfamiliar to how this epidemic came to be not only in Geauga County, the state of Ohio, but nationwide, let me explain. The opiate epidemic started back in the late 1990s with a push in the medical community to start treating pains as a fifth vital sign. It was mandated that physicians had to ask their patients on a scale from 1 to 10 what their pain level was and treat accordingly. It would be nothing to leave a doctor's office with 60 to 90 Vicodin, Oxycontin, etc., opioid-type medicines with a refill for 3 or 4 more times. Hence, doctors were forced to treat patients with drugs such as Oxycontin, oxycodone, Percocet, and Vicodin usually reserved for patients with moderate chronic to severe pain. Many at that time believed these prescriptions were too strong or addictive. By 2005, the country was faced with a prescription addiction epidemic. Physicians then started to wean the patients off the prescriptions, but many were helplessly addicted. So another push came to limit the prescription prescribed, but by now, many were hooked. Without access to their medications, people turned to the streets. Pills on the street now cost about $20. Heroin is much cheaper and is an easier and faster high. Today, heroin is cheaper than marijuana on the street and in schools. Just to give you another overwhelming number, in the year 2010, doctors and pharmacists had prescribed enough opiate painkillers to medicate every American in the country around the clock, 1 every 4 hours, for a month. The population in 2010 was 311 million. Last year in Cuyahoga County, there were 161 heroin overdose deaths. There were only 112 homicides. Since 1999, unintentional drug overdose deaths in Ohio have increased 372%. When we started the Opiate Task Force in March of 2012, there were 38 deaths between Lake and Geauga County. As we sit here today, there are 73, with a 74th being investigated as we speak. About two and a half months ago, I took pleas in my courtroom on 8 OVI DUI charges, meaning drug driving cases. I had 9 heroin addicts in my courtroom that same day. From that point on, I keep a tally sheet right on my bench. Since May 28th, the number of heroin addicts before me are 49. Heroin addicts arise from 2 paths. Either a person suffered a serious illness or medical issue and was prescribed an opiate for pain. They became addicted to the pain medications and are now unable to get additional prescriptions, so they've turned to heroin. This is the scenario I just referenced. The other is a movement from the gateway drugs, alcohol and marijuana, to the stronger drugs such as heroin, as they build up a tolerance and are constantly experimenting to achieve a greater high. It's not to say that all people who use and or abuse alcohol and marijuana will go on to use heroin, but I've yet to ask a heroin addict before me if they just decided one day to start heroin, not ever using drugs before. Not one says yes. They all said they started with with marijuana and or alcohol. Heroin has never been, nor will ever be, a recreational drug. I'd like to give you a taste too of what I go around and have been doing for the last year and a half plus that I present to schools in the past about these gateway drugs and the heroin issue. I tell the students that I wish everyone could see what I see on a daily basis, how drugs and alcohol adversely affect people's lives and relationships. To begin, I have 3 words: Steubenville rape trial. Nothing good ever came from 16 and 17-year-olds drinking alcohol. Underage drinking is a serious offense. I take it as a serious offense. And when I say underage, I just deal with the ones from the day they turned 18 to the day before they turned 21. Judge Brendel deals with the children the day before they turn 18 and younger. It's punishable by 6 months in jail, $1,000 fine. When I speak at DARE graduations, and I tell the students this, I feel like when I'm talking to high school students, I tell them when I'm speaking at DARE graduations, the children are going through some education themselves, but I feel like I have to speak to the parents. What examples are you setting for your children? Are you drinking 2-3 glasses of wine when you're doing homework with them? Are you drinking beer every night at dinner as they sit with you at dinner? Are you the parents that are hosting the parties at graduations, letting the underage young adults or children drink because you think you're providing a safe environment to them? I tell a story how I recently had a 20-year-old student from John Carroll, 1 month from turning 21. He was convicted of an alcohol-related offense in my courtroom. He unfortunately, he was in ROTC. He unfortunately now has to return the $80,000 in scholarships and can no longer be commissioned into the armed service. They have a no-tolerance policy from one bad decision. And as I tell the students, you may experiment with alcohol and marijuana, not saying it is right, legal, or even acceptable. But do not experiment with heroin, because you can be addicted on the first usage if you're lucky enough not to die on the first usage. The county has been seeing heroin cut with battery acid. That does crazy things to your head. The purity of the heroin these days is 30% more pure than it was during the Vietnam War. And speaking with treatment professionals, I'm told that less than 2 out of 10 will ever achieve long-term stable recovery. In a moment, I'm going to let you hear from my friend Nikki, who goes on tour with me, so to speak, with the schools. She's almost 5 years sober, almost 6 years, sober from a terrible heroin addiction. And I'll let her tell her story in a moment, but it's riveting, but it's real. So coming full circle, when I gathered all the proposals from the opiate task force for how it should be suggested that funds be spent, this is what I came up with. To begin, we absolutely do need residential treatment facilities here in this county. However, the cost based upon what I was told from Lake Geauga Recovery Centers is that their operational expenses for 1 year at Lake House and Oak House is $409,000. A cost which would not include a monthly rental payment if you did not own the building. Since this is unrealistic at this juncture, due to the fact that graciously, however unfortunate, this is a one-time disbursement and not a sustaining fund, it seems impractical to go this route, as the doors would almost have to be shut down in a year because we wouldn't, at this time, looking forward, unless some other funds became available to sustain that operation. And further, a big hurdle too, as we sit here today, out of the 16 communities, meaning villages and or townships and or cities, all but 1 or 2 have zoning restrictions to even allow the residential treatments to be in our neighborhoods. Another consideration is a halfway house. These are less restrictive and less costly to run, but you would still have to staff them, which would be probably 3 people per day on an 8-hour shift around the clock, a cost of approximately $50,000 to $60,000 per person. Again, that does not include lease payments. Lease payments could probably be assuaged by rent charged to the residents, but again, the hurdle, first and foremost, is the zoning restrictions for such a halfway house. Last year, Mayor King proposed to City Councilor Chardon the house at the corner of Wilson Mills and Park that the city owns and won't be using for about 5 years to rent for the purposes of a halfway house. That was turned down almost unanimously. Maybe the time is better now, almost a year later, such that if the stars were all aligned, funding for personnel, zoning restrictions removed, that could be a possible location for such a facility. What then, since these first 2 options priorities seem to be impractical and unattainable at this time, can we do? In tandem with the money proposed by Commissioner Spitaleri for law enforcement, we would propose it include mandatory training for all law enforcement and first offenders to be trained and equipped with Narcan. I know some of the first responders are equipped at this juncture in Geauga County. A vial of Narcan, which to those who have never heard of it, can be used as a nasal spray to treat immediately someone who is in the process of overdosing from heroin. It will, if anyone's seen Pulp Fiction, it's kind of the same reaction. It will bring that person their breathing back and everything so that you can hopefully save them. It's right now there's in Massachusetts, it's about a 96% saving rate. They have their law enforcement equipped with that. Since we have about 500 law enforcement, including first responders in the county, the cost of a vial is $8. That would be a cost of $4,000. Second alternative would be hiring a certified qualified counselor for an intensive aftercare program after completing the jail treatment program to assist in the continued treatment of those addicted. This program will be available to municipal court and common pleas court, and with some access limited by the juvenile court. At this time, I would bring up Dr. Dennis Michelson, who is my treatment counselor at the jail treatment program, extraordinaire. I'd like to have him expound a little bit on this before I move on.
It's good to see everyone here tonight. 3 years ago, we didn't have a problem. Now, there's not much argument about that, and I'm very thankful for that. Just want you to think about 3 quick questions. If you were to go down to the jail tonight, down to intake, you'd hear this noise. That's a young lady who came in. She's detoxing right now. And about every 18 to 30 seconds, she gets up, wanders around the room, very uncomfortable. She's eluded law enforcement for a while, but finally, she was arrested. And I agree with Commissioner Spitleri that there needs to be that law enforcement piece. I think we're saving her life by having her in jail right now. There's no detox facility here. There's no residential treatment in the county, and the waiting list for Oak House is quite a bit. So the best place for her to be tonight, given where she is in her addiction, is down at the end of the Green Mile in the Geauga County Sheriff's Office jail.
Amen.
Does she want to get out of heroin yet? No, she just wants to get out of jail. And while we're watching her, her grandmother, bless her heart, sweet lady, calls and wants to bond her out because she loves her, and I'm sure she does. But that would be absolutely, in my opinion, one of the worst things that could happen. She wants to help her. We are helping her.
Amen.
The jail has become a very good place to get help for heroin addiction. I work with Lake Geauga Recovery Centers, and we have operated the jail treatment program for 15 years. I think we have an above-average program. I think we have good success rate in-house. I would put our program now up against almost any other jail treatment program that I know of. And so when you ask the question, what does a heroin user want, especially when they get put in jail? They want out of jail.
One more heroin.
But jail is exactly where they need to be, unless they can go to some other treatment facility or something, which is usually cost prohibitive for many of the people we deal with, and unless they have extremely good insurance and so on. I've looked at all the proposals, and I wrote a letter to the commissioners and to the sheriff and to the judges, and I think they're excellent proposals. And my letter basically said, let's slow down just a minute, because I think we're waging a war on drugs without waging a war on addiction. Because if you removed every drug from this county tomorrow, you would not solve the problem of addiction. Number 72 and number 73 of those that died were from Geauga County last week. The body dropped in Lakewood, another body dropped in Wickliffe, but they were both from Geauga County. So if we run all the drugs out of the county, that would be great. They'll just go, see, and that was my caution. I was not trying to pour cold water on anything. I was just saying that the issue is addiction. If you don't address addiction, then you can, pretty much throw money at a situation and not get much result. And the classic public health model, especially from a prevention angle, and most all of us are trying to prevent this, you deal with the agent, which in our case would be heroin. You deal with the host, that would be the user, and then you deal with the environment. All I'm saying is don't just focus on the agent, on heroin. Heroin is not the enemy. A few years ago it was crack. A few years ago it was meth. Heroin will go away one of these days, but addiction will still be there, and then we'll have another substance to talk about. So what do we need? I know what we want. We want everything. We want a quick cure. We want a silver bullet. This is a complex problem, and we can't get what we want. I want a residential treatment facility, $409,000 a year operating cost. This is not the place or the time to do that. I wish we had it. So what do we need? If I had those 74 dead bodies in here, and Judge Grindell and I, when we had the premiere of the video down at the Geauga Theater, we estimated, rather he did, that in the middle of the Geauga Theater, you would have probably had about, at that time it was like 69, and that would have filled up that whole middle section of the Geauga Theater. These are people that are now dead, and again, I'm not trying to overstate the issue, but if I were to take these corpses, 74 of them, and say, what can we learn from these lessons, these corpses? You can't address all the biopsychosocial problems all at once, okay? Everybody's different, everybody's unique. But I think there's general agreement that the weakest link right now in helping the addict, we do well in jail. We get them to focus off getting out of jail and getting off of heroin. But Sheriff McClellan's not here today, but I'm sure he would agree with it because we've spoken in many places about there's something in the asphalt down at the safety center where I work with somebody or someone else works with somebody for a good period of time, not long enough, but as much as we have now. But as soon as they step outside that jail, everything changes. Okay. Heroin, primarily heroin, is going to take a year to 18 months for that person to get away from allostasis to homeostasis and to get back to anything that looks like normal. So our proposal is to have a specific, intense, almost a partial hospitalization type aftercare specific to heroin addicts only as they get out of primary treatment in jail or maybe even other types of primary treatment. There has to be a specialized program. Marijuana comes up and bites you slowly, and the hook gets in slowly. Alcohol's a little different. Heroin is so seductive, so seductive. And so, if we can't get what we want, I sure wish we could get what we need. And I think we're prepared. We've got everything in place to perhaps do this for a year. And if it works as well as I think it will work, then I think we can, move on from there. But right now, there needs to be something from the time they leave jail, especially jail treatment, rather than going to an aftercare 1 day a week, or even an IOP 3 days a week, to something maybe 5 days a week, all day long. That helps in that transition. I would say, just anecdotally from my own observation, if I were to point out these bodies and give you names, I could show you where probably the majority of them are now dead because they were made to be clean for a while, either in jail or in some other type of confinement. They come out, they shoot up, and they die. And so I think this is a key piece, and I think it's something we need, and I hope you'll give due consideration to it.
Thank you, Dr. Michelson. The cost to hiring one of those certified qualified people is get about $40,000 per person. Hiring a certified qualified counselor to start a jail treatment program at the detention center in Portage County, because there is no such jail treatment program for the youth. Perhaps Portage County could assume some of their financial responsibility as their inmates would also use the program. That would be about $40,000 per person. Hiring part-time pretrial release officers for each of the 3 courts, the immunity court, the common pleas court, which Judge Fury oversees, and probate, mostly juvenile court, which Judge Hill oversees. This person would assist in the monitoring of people on bond conditions with drug and alcohol problems, especially the heroin addicts at this time, ensuring that they are getting assessed, entering and applying program directives, maintaining sobriety, and other duties. This would be at approximately $20,000 would be on a part-time basis. 3 of them would cost about $60,000. A public awareness campaign marketed through the Geauga Family First Council, a very vital program throughout Geauga County, or whichever group is designated, can help create, evaluate, and oversee a public awareness campaign to combat opiate use by Geauga teens. They did this through the Cleveland Foundation years ago. The cost of about $32,000. We've upped it a little bit. It's about $35,000. The campaign will consist of a series of postcards with eye-opening pictures on the front mailed to the parents of all high school students showing the consequences of opiate use. On the back of each postcard, state and local statistics regarding youth opiate use gathered from the courts, JFS, and mental health agencies would be listed. The postcards will also feature tips to help parents communicate with their teens about the dangers of opiate use. Billboards, posters, press releases, and future articles in local newspapers to help reinforce these messages about the dangers and use of opiates. As I said, that would be about $35,000. Before I close, I'd really like you to hear a few words from Nikki Maletti. We've become friends this last year. If any of you had the opportunity to watch the Channel 3 program, she showed us her heart, and I want you to hear her story.
Hello, my name is Nicole, and I'm a recovering heroin addict. I grew up in a normal family, normal childhood, Christian-based, went to church. My uncle's actually a pastor in Geauga County at the Geauga County jail. And so my life was pretty much normal. I have nothing to base my use off of. And when I went to 6th grade, everything was okay, and I went to Berkshire, which is, Berkshire, obviously, and when I went to 7th grade, 7th through 12th is all in one building. So you have 7th graders in with 12th graders, which is kind of a problem for me, because I didn't fit into any stereotypical group, band or cheerleaders, or just, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And I ended up hanging out with older kids who were in 12th grade. And anybody knows that a 7th grader who's 13 years old, just starting to learn, basically about life, hanging out with kids who are 17 and 18, there's obviously a problem there. So I started smoking marijuana. I was about 12, 13 years old in 7th grade, and it slowly progressed. I would drink a little bit, but that wasn't my thing. I didn't really like weed, and everybody was, doing something, so I had to pick and choose what I liked. Eventually, it led to pills, and later on, it became heroin. I started snorting heroin for a while, and I, never had thought I would obviously become that person. I got pregnant at the age of 17 and quit using drugs and thought I cleaned my life up for a while. After I gave birth, I went straight back to using drugs with my friends because I, never learned how to really recover. I just quit using because I was pregnant. I lost custody of my child, my firstborn child, for a while. And that's when I met my husband, and he was also an addict. My husband overdosed while we were together, and luckily the paramedics, like she was saying, were qualified to use Narcan, and they saved my husband's life because I called 911. Some people don't realize that they can do that. He lived, we stayed together. Eventually I got sober. I was in and out of rehab. I struggled quite a bit, throughout. I ended up dropping out of school, like I said, I had a baby young. And I went to rehab. My husband did not. When I got out of rehab, I cleaned my life up. I've been sober ever since. I had, regained custody of my child, which is very, very unlikely for an addict to do, especially a heroin addict. And I know Judge Henry said that he was very proud of me, and I come a very long way in the course of 2 years, which I had regained custody, which was a very fast, recovery for me. and I was lucky to have some really great people in my life. Like I said though, my husband, however, did not go to rehab. Eventually, after we had our second child, he ended up relapsing and having to go to rehab. Now, since then, he has been sober, and we've, that's been 4 years for him now. But I, kept pressing him to go to rehab before that happened, and he didn't. Anyway, needless to say, we were both, sober today, and then we have 4 beautiful children. If she said, if you've seen the Channel 3 things, you've seen my children who are crazy and absolutely adorable. But, heroin really has affected my life, and I'm embarrassed to say that I am a heroin addict sometimes, because it is embarrassing. People look at you different. But at the same time, I know if I don't speak up, other people won't realize that it affects just your day-to-day person. I wasn't just somebody off the street that, came from a bad house or anything like that. I was just a normal, everyday kid with a Christian background, so.
Funeral, who was number 71 in our death toll. So, at 26 years old, he died. In closing, I'd just like to, this was more about educational, to give people background who don't know from whence this epidemic arose, and to ask for a few things on behalf of all the departments. One dime spent towards treating this is greatly appreciated. There are things, though, that some of you can do as a community as a whole with minimal or no cost involved. Back in November, there was a group of us who was comprised of Dave Toth, who was the principal of West G at that time, myself, Dr. Michelson, Dr. Bob Coleman, our coroner, who I just noted walked in, Cheryl, mother of a recovering addict, Terry, and a recovering addict himself, and I believe that was it on a panel. It was a panel-based forum. We spoke at Newberry High School. I'd like for us to get together as a community and see that each school on either a monthly or bi-monthly basis, we speak at these to even inform the community even more about this tragedy. It then has question and answers for the audience to pose to the panel. Back in May, I went to the Board of Superintendents and I proposed mandatory drug testing in the schools. And I know many people will gasp, but as Mr. Wendell will also attest to, we see younger and younger addicts these days. I proposed that it start in 6th grade because I think a duty of all administrators is to provide a safe and healthy atmosphere in the schools. And when there's the number of kids on drugs as we're seeing, it's not safe and healthy at all. You can go to your school boards if you're in favor of that and back that proposal. You can lobby legislators to lift the archaic 1967 federal law prohibiting a max of 16 beds on treatment facilities, meaning you cannot house more than 16 residents at a time who are recovering from an addiction or mental health issue. Clean out your medicine cabinets of old prescriptions. Dump the unused old prescription drugs at any one of the 3 disposals that we have in the county, either at the Sheriff's Office, Middlefield Police Department, or Bainbridge Police Department. In closing, I'd just like to say we're never going to eliminate this problem. As Dr. Michelson said, one drug will replace another, but heroin's been around for a while. It's just we have to contain it as best as possible. I will continue the fight, as I know many of you will continue the fight, going to schools to educate, trying to treat those that are addicted, inform people all around about the perils, and do what we can to, again, contain this as best as we can. Again, Commissioners, thank you for your time and consideration, your proposals, and thank you, community members. And again, any monies expended is well spent. Thank you.
Thank you.